Welcome to Am I the A-hole, where OP's sister-in-law demands that she has a vegetarian wedding menu, but OP decides not to let her sister-in-law dictate her wedding menu, resulting in intense family drama. I, 29-year-old female, and my fiancé, Dave, 31M, are due to get married in a few months. Everything has gone smoothly with the planning until about a fortnight ago, when my soon-to-be sister-in-law, Lily, 34F, started getting involved. She has been a vegetarian for over a decade and advocates passionately for animal rights. I respect her choice, but she is the type that will guilt people at family barbecues for having a burger and send graphic animal cruelty videos to the family group chat. When we sent out our wedding invites, Lily called me immediately and asked if we would be having a vegetarian menu. I told her we'd have a plethora of vegetarian dishes, but the main course would be meat because most of our guests were not vegetarian. This totally threw Lily for a loop, and she let me know that having meat at a wedding in 2024 was completely tone-deaf and asked if we would consider making the whole menu vegetarian. I said no, a big no, and told her that we wanted to provide diversity so all of our guests feel at ease. She did not let the matter drop and began sending me recipes for so-called scrumptious vegan entrees and links to catering companies specializing in plant-based wedding menus. I ignored everything from her, thinking she would let the subject die off. But she upped the ante. She called her brother and tried to get him to convince me that we were promoting cruelty because we wanted to serve meat on our special day. My fiancé told her that it was our decision and she needed to back off. But she continued pushing, saying it was a family matter and that I was being inconsiderate for not taking her lifestyle into account. Her demands were unreasonable, but it came to a head last night when my would-be sister-in-law texted in our family group chat saying she would boycott the wedding if we didn't agree to a completely vegetarian menu, saying she couldn't, in good conscience, attend a celebration that served dead animals, and attending would go against her values. Initially, I tried to ignore her messages in the group, but when a few other family members started supporting her unreasonable demands and started saying so-and-so about our behavior towards animals and other bullshit, I finally replied. I told her and other vegetarian relatives that if you guys didn't like our wedding menu, there was no need to attend our wedding. On top of it, my fiancé thumbed up on my message. Most people in the group supported us, and my sister-in-law and other veggies left the chat. I thought it was over, but no. The next day, I got a call from my fiancé's parents, who invited me and my fiancé to their home to discuss the matter. Now, they are trying to influence us to take my would-be sister-in-law's request to keep the peace. They suggest going meatless for at least the reception dinner. My fiancé and I are frustrated because we have already finalized the menu, paid deposits, and worked so hard to create a balanced selection for everyone. On top of all this, we can't let my sister-in-law dictate our wedding. Can I be an AH here? OP is certainly not an AH. It is completely unreasonable and entitled to demand a vegetarian menu. On top of that, OP's would-be sister-in-law is blaming OP for cruelty for eating meat. It is weird for so-called activists to demand vegetarianism. It can be a choice, but it is not human nature. Humans are omnivores, and they eat both meat and plant-based foods, and they would be. I think these people don't understand the basic natural laws and are not familiar with the food web. They need to learn. Eating meat is not tone-deaf. Instead, forcing others to eat grass is. If it is about life, dude, plants are alive. Don't say they don't feel pain. If one of your siblings cannot feel pain, would you eat them? Here, OP is clearly not an AH, and I would give her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP's sister-in-law is clearly an AH. So, I would rate her 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to another Am I the A-hole, where OP's incompetent son demands that he hand over his business to him. For the last 30 years, I have grown a large local hardware business in my town that has 3 main branches and 2 small shops. It all started as a tiny shop making ends meet. Now it is a full-blown business generating handsome revenue. I always hoped it would be a legacy I could pass down, something that would stay in the family. I have 2 children, Emma, 30-year-old female, and my son Jake, 28-year-old male. My daughter works in finance and has a good career. On the other hand, my son has been in and out of odd jobs since high school. My daughter has always been the epitome of independence and grit. I am very proud of her, whereas my son never really seemed to get his footing. He dropped out of college twice and came home more times than I can count with empty pockets. After the failure of his so-called business ventures, most of them were funded by me. All his failures were solely because of his irresponsible irresponsible behavior. I love both my kids, but there is a clear distinction between their responsibility levels. My son has been working part-time at one of our hardware stores, but he only does so because I insisted he do something constructive with his time. He wasn't exactly a model employee. He would often come in late, sometimes missing entire days without a word, and basically just go through the motions. Still, I kept him on because he's my son, and I hoped he'd eventually mature and take the job seriously. A year ago, I began planning to pull back from working myself and maybe retire in 5 years or so. That's when the trouble started. Jake assumed that because he was working there, I would automatically hand the business over to him when I retired. One day, I was out to lunch, and he made a comment about taking over the business. I laughed it off because, honestly speaking, I had never seen any evidence that he was ready to run the business, let alone take ownership. Initially, I thought that was just wishful thinking on his part, but for the last 6 months, my son kept coming every month with it, asking to know the financials, wanting to know when I will retire, and even suggesting changes to the way I ran things. So 2 months ago, I finally sat him down and told him straight up that he wasn't ready to take over the store. I explained that I needed someone responsible who would actually show up on time, work hard, and make the business a priority. I said I would stand beside him and help him learn what he needs to run the business if he is really serious about this being a career move. But currently, he wouldn't be handed the keys just because of his last name. He flipped out, insisting this was his right to inherit the business because he was the only son, and how I was being unfair to him as compared to Emma. It turned into a massive argument, and he stormed out of the office, refusing to come in for the next 3 weeks. After 3 months, he returned to the business because of the involvement of my wife and daughter Emma. However, his behavior went south after his return. He became rude to customers and his co-workers, and started messing up orders on purpose. So I had to sit him down once again. I told him that if he didn't straighten up, I would just kick him out no matter he is my son. He agreed to mend his behavior, but he didn't. Last week, one of the higher-ranking staff members told me that my son was bad-mouthing other workers, saying how he was going to be the new boss soon, and that when I retire, he was going to run things his way. He went far enough to say that I'm too old-fashioned, and that he has big plans to modernize the business. He didn't even deny anything when I confronted him with this in an employee meeting on the matter. Instead, he smugly informed me that it was just a matter of time, and I should get used to the idea. I was furious. I immediately told him that if he thinks he could waltz in here and take it over, he's sorely mistaken because this is my business, and it's going to stay that way until I decide otherwise. That's when he made an ultimatum. Either I give him control of the business by the end of the year, or he's leaving, cutting all ties with me. I told him that I don't need him at my business. He has been absent ever since, unwilling to talk to me. My wife is distraught, and now my daughter is also pushing me to set my relationship right with my son. They have even been threatening me to cut ties with me if I don't rectify things. I am totally confused, and I want an outside perspective on whether I am in the wrong, and what should be the best response in this situation. OP is not the AH here. Instead, Jake's behavior is very irresponsible. He behaves as if he were the prince of a classical empire, demanding kingship. OP's approach is not to pass down the legacy until Jake proves himself to be a responsible and competent son. So, it is clear that OP deserves 0 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP's son is an AH. I would rate him 2 out of 5. OP's wife and daughter are also being unreasonable, and I would also give them 0.5 out of 5. What do the Mac Reddit fans think? Is the OP an AH or not? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like the stories I brought you, just hit the like button, share them as much as you can, and don't forget to subscribe to Mac Reddit for a daily dose. Bye bye. See you tomorrow with some more spicy fries.